Hi there, and welcome to the second section of this course, which is called PowerShell Configuring Sites. And in the first video, we will cover how to do an existing site modifications. In this video, we will take a look at the ways we can modify existing site collections using the PnP-PowerShell commandlets. We will explore in depth how these commandlets can be used to build and modify content in a meaningful way. We can achieve quite a lot with scripting using PowerShell against Sharepoint, and do it quite easily and reuse our scripts. So PowerShell can be utilized to easily deliver content packages consisting of anything we want really and anything we need within the Sharepoint structure. So site columns, content types, lists, and then when we have the script already set up, usually it's very easy to target multiple different individual sites. That can be further automated based on some business logic, which we'll cover in our demonstration in this video. PnP-PowerShell offers quite an extensive documentation page located at this location. It explains all of the commandlets we get with this PnP-PowerShell module. Another way to get to know the commandlet is to type get help -name and then the name of our commandlet, optionally providing the -examples or -detailed switch. This will actually query the GitHub location and download the help from there and display in the scripting environment window. Let's dive into the demonstration. We will use two script files for this demo. The first one we'll use to create site columns, a content type, and a list in our web. Then we will apply our content type to that list and make it the default one. Of course, we are doing that just as an example to showcase the possibilities of our PowerShell. The second script will be a scheduled job, so a batch processing job, which will be invoked via the task schedule of Windows operating system. We will set it to execute every certain amount of time, and it will query our self-service list and perform necessary provisioning. Let us get started. First of all, let us take a look at our first script, structure.ps1. We are connecting to a certain web, then we will get that web reference here. To make this script capable of running several times without errors, first we need to ensure that we do not have any of the items we want to create. So the first section here removes any items which might be present in our web. I want to take a moment to stress that all the commandlets are wrappers for client-side object model, and the execution of functions in client-side object model is done primarily via a client context object. And these commandlets, most of them, are self-sufficient, meaning that we are passing only the textual description of the parameters, and inside each function creates its own client context object and does the appropriate actions and commits or executes query on that object. So each commandlet is self-sufficient. We need to try to avoid putting more than one object in any of the parameters, because chances are those two or more objects will have different client context associated with them, and the commandlet, even if constructed correctly, will fail internally to execute the request. So you will notice in any of the commandlets, at most I will have one real object passed as a parameter, and all the others will be a simple strings or other simple types. Okay, so we are removing the list, the content type, and the 3 fields here, and then we can start constructing them. An add PnP field commandlet is quite versatile in a sense that depending on how we specify our parameters, it will create a field in different contexts. It can either be a side column or a column in the list. Basically, we specify the internal name, the display name, the required switch parameter. This little symbol is just a denotion that the commandlet continues on the next line. Then we also specify the type of the Sharepoint column, and in the case of choices we also specify choices parameter and some optional parameter like a group name to which to assign our field. We do that for all of 3 fields. And for the last one, which is of type boolean, I need to set the default value explicitly. So what I'm doing, I'm getting the field with another commandlet get PnP field and doing some value assigning to it and updating it. Next, we are adding the content type. And here, let me try to visualize how the getHelp command works. Suppose we want to know more about the add PnP content type command. We can just type getHelp, name add PnP content type and press enter. At this point we'll be presented with the help from the GitHub repository. We can shorten that a bit because name can be omitted and it expects the first sort of value here to correspond to the name switch. And as I told you, suppose we are only interested in the examples. We can add the examples switch here and press enter. And this will give us the examples. Sometimes one, sometimes more, depending on how it is specified in the actual help. So, we are creating the new content type, giving it the name and the group. And then I am getting the content type into the separate variable here. And then we need to add our 3 side columns to that content type, which can be done via another commandlet which is called add PnP field to content type. It's very self-explanatory. When all 3 fields are added, we need to get the title field, which is there by default because our content type is inheriting from the item content type, the most default one, which has the title field in it. We will use this reference to hide our title field from the new and edit forms in our list further down the line. Now we need to create the list using the new PnP list command. We are giving the title here, the parameter whether the list should appear on the quick launch, the web in which the list should be generated, template of the list, the URL, and we just continue from there. Once that command has been executed, we are getting the list via getPnPList commandlet into the variable and doing some modifications to it, enabling content types, disabling attachments, updating the list. And also we are adding our desired content type and removing the default item content type with these 2 commandlets. And now we want to hide 2 of the fields from the new and edit forms of that list. We want to hide the title because it is irrelevant to our logic, And we also want to hide the processed switch boolean variable, because that will only be triggered by our batch job script, which we will discuss further. And also we are adding a new PnP view and setting it as a default, which will then substitute the all items view. It will contain more columns to show, such as artifact type, department name, and process. Basically all the fields we are interested in. Let us run the script by using F5. After the script has run, we can go to our actual web and see the changes. Here is my page before the changes, and I just refresh it. And we can see we have a new entry for that self-service list. You can see the user interface is the new modern one. It doesn't change anything, whether it's modern one or the classic Sharepoint user interface. The manipulations underneath are pretty much the same. You can see that there is the everything.aspx, so our second view which we added instead of the all items, and it is showing those 3 columns. And when I click the new button here, there is no title, there's only artifact type and department name options. Let me choose something here for calendar and maybe add a human resources department name. Save that. Let us add one more item. And we want it to be announcements for IT department. We are now ready to discuss the second part, the second script, which is the one doing processing of items in this self-service list. First, let's discuss the file itself, and then we'll guide you how to actually do a scheduled task in our Windows system. The file starts with the function definition, but the entry point is on line 15. And we do our usual stuff. We connect to SP Online, get the web, and then we are trying to get items from that self-service list by using the get PnP list item commandlet. Even though it says PnP list item, it will return more than one if that's the criteria. So the parameters are the web we are querying against, the list name of the list we are querying against, and an optional parameter which is called query. And here we can specify the query written in camel language, so standard Sharepoint querying language for lists and libraries, to retrieve only a certain slice of items we are interested in. And at this point we are interested in the items which have a field processed set to false or 0. Once we get the items from this commandlet, we can easily iterate through them by using PowerShell syntax. We're treating this variable as an array of some objects, and then via the pipeline character we are passing those objects into the for each statement, which will then do something with each element of the array. And each element inside of such for each statement is accessed by the following symbol, $ and underscore sign. So this is equivalent of this in JavaScript. And once we are in that iteration, we are just calling the function which we have defined earlier and passing the item and also the web object. So this is the function definition in PowerShell. The next line is the parameter definition of that function, and then we are just executing the body logic. From that item we are getting the values of our fields, and we are setting the appropriate values for the template parameter, and then we're just calling the new PnP list commandlet, specifying the web, specifying the title, and also specifying the template and the onQuickLaunch parameter switch. After that has been done, we need to mark this item as done, and we do that by setting a process field to true and calling the update and calling the context.execute query. After this has been done, the list will be created for that item, the item will be updated, and the processed field value will be true, and next time the script is run in this query here, we will not get already processed items, because they will not fit the criteria in this query. Simple as that. The only thing left to do for us is to create a new scheduled task. Let us do that. I have this string line here, and we will use that as part of the parameters for the scheduled task. Let us go into Scheduled Task Manager. You see I have a folder here for our demo purposes. While we are in this folder, click on the Create Task, set the name, and we want to define two things: when this task is actually run and what happens when the task is run. So presumably you would want something to run periodically. Of course, let's say daily, every 1 day, and repeat the task every 5 minutes within that day. So this part is easy. The only thing left to do is to correctly specify the path of our PowerShell script. And to do that, we just need to type PowerShell.exe here. This will be enough because PowerShell is part of our path environment variable, so the task will be able to find this executable, but now we need to pass the path of our script into the PowerShell.exe file as an argument. And this is where that line from the script comes, and I just paste it here. This line does two things. It prefixes the path with execution policy bypass in case we have the strict execution policy on our scripts, and also then specifies the actual path to our script. And we press OK, and OK again. And we can run the script to verify it is working. And refresh. Last run result 0x0, that means that everything completed successfully. And now we can go to our Sharepoint site and see the results. All we need to do is refresh this page. As you can see, the processed here changed from no to yes, and we also have two links appeared for two new lists which were created: calendar and announcement. So this is a very basic automatization scenario.